Hi everyone, I'm Boris, and in this first video of my YouTube channel I will show you how to use Node.js, or at least how to get started with Node.js. So Node.js is basically a runtime environment that will allow you to build applications based on JavaScript outside your browser, outside the front-end part of your browser. The idea of this video is to give you some overview of how Node.js works, what it can do, and also what are some key principles of this technology and different tools that it implies. So we're gonna discuss NPM, Express, template engine like EJS, and also some other little tools that may help you develop using Node.js. This video is really meant to be a hands-on introduction to the technology, to Node.js, and we're not gonna go into details in every aspect of the language, because that will take hours. So to get started, the first thing we need is to install Node.js. For that, we can go on the website nodejs.org, and you will find there two main buttons. The first one is to install an LTS version, that's the long-term support version. That means a version that will be maintained in time by Node.js. The other one is the latest version, so currently it's the 15.8.0, and honestly my advice will be to install any of these versions if you get started, because they will have all the features you need to begin with Node.js. In my case, I already downloaded the LTS version, so you can do so or download the latest one. To install the version, depending on your system, you have multiple options. You can either install it directly from this website, or you can also install it from command line. For example, if you're using Mac, you can use Homebrew, which is a tool that allows you to install applications through the terminal, and you can install Node.js using Homebrew. So the command is very simple. It's just writing brew install node directly in your terminal. That's another option, or you have a last option, which is maybe a bit more complex if you're starting with it, but that's called NVM, which is for Node Version Manager. And the idea of this tool is to allow you to manage your different versions of nodes very easily. That's especially useful if you work on different projects and you need for every project a different version of Node.js. For example, an old project may require the version 10 or 11 or 12, whereas other more recent projects will require version 14, 15, and so on. So that's also a very interesting way of installing Node.js. That's actually how I installed mine, but you can totally begin with the versions available directly on Node.js website. Once it's installed on your computer, you can go to a code editor, and for editing code you can use any editor, any software that you want. In this video I will use a software that's called Visual Studio Code, because I just think the interface is nice and there is all options and everything we need to code properly, but you can also use Sublime Text, Atom, Brackets, or any code editor that suits your needs. I already created a folder in this environment, in this code editor, which is called Node.js, and we can right click on this folder and open an integrated terminal just to run a first command that will allow us to check the version of Node.js. To check the version of Node.js, which will allow us also to check if Node.js has been properly installed, you can just type node-v, and you will see here the version of Node.js appearing if you installed it properly. In my case, you can see that I've got the version 14.15.4 installed on my computer. So now that Node.js is installed, we can begin working with it. The first thing I will do is creating a new file within this Node.js folder, and I will call it index.js. In this file, we can put some code that's already written in Node.js website, and that's just some code to get started and again to test if everything's working properly. That means it will just allow us to check if all components of Node.js are working fine, and if we can go further with them, or if we need to check something related to our installation or debug anything. So I will go to the documentation of Node.js, then to guides, and getting started guide. I can copy this code, so I will just select all and make copy. And I will go back to the code editor and paste this code, save, so with Command S or Control S on Windows, and finally I can run this code. So to run the code, and that's also why I think Visual Studio Code is useful and it's really interesting for that, is that independently of your operating system, whether you're on Mac, Linux, Windows, or anything, you will be able to right-click on the folder to open an integrated terminal, which is right there. And here you can just write node space and the name of your script. So in this case, it's called index.javascript. If I hit enter, you will see a message here that tells server running at a URL, and we can just copy this URL and open it in our browser. So I will go to Firefox, open a new tab, and paste this URL. And when we open this URL, we can see the hello world message that's showing up. We can now go back to the code, and I will explain a bit more what this copy-pasted code is actually doing. First thing which is important is that there is no problem, and that will allow you, if at this step everything is working fine and you have no error, that means Node.js is properly installed and you can use it for your projects. This code is creating an HTTP server, as we can see here. We will get back to this require a bit later. It's creating an HTTP server that will allow us to process HTTP requests. That is why we are able to access the application through a web page. We have a host name, so that's just the local IP address of our computer, which is the default one for everyone. It's 127.0.0.1, and we have also the port, which is 3000 by default, but we could change it if we want. Then this function http.createServer is creating an HTTP server, and it basically shows an output for every request that is made on the server. It is giving this response with a status code 200. That means everything is going well on an HTTP language. Then we have a set header that here is telling that the content we are sending through the browser is just plain text. That could be something else like JSON, HTML, or anything. And finally, we will answer hello world, so that's the message we've just seen. This line we can see here is server.listen, and that means that's just the server configuration that's telling which port and hostname to listen for this HTTP server. So we create the server first, and then we just tell the server which port and hostname to listen. And the last thing we're doing here is making a console.log to tell us directly in the console on which hostname and port the server is running. So this console.log, just pay attention to this. If you're used to console log in JavaScript, usually you expect this console log output to be directly in your browser's console. So if I go back here to my web browser and I open the developer console, you can expect here in this console to have all the JavaScript that's appearing, so especially these console logs. The thing is that with Node.js, we're creating a runtime environment that's nothing to have with the browser. In other terms, this console.log we're making in this script run by Node.js are really meant only to be displayed in this developer console, in this Node.js console that we're running on the backend and not on the front end of our web application. So now let's assume we want to change a bit this content, for example the hello world. We could easily here modify the text and say, for example, hello everyone, and save this modification. If I go back to my browser and I refresh the page, you will see that no modification has been made. And the reason for this is because Node.js actually needs the server to be restarted every time we make a modification. So we can go back to the console here, make Ctrl+C to quit the server, and run it again. So node index.js. And now that the server has been launched again, we can go back to the browser, refresh the page, and we can see that the text has been changed. So now I'd like to introduce you to a key concept of Node.js, which is NPM for Node Package Manager. So I'll go to npmjs.com, and this website, you will visit it a lot if you continue developing with Node.js or even other JavaScript or web related technologies. It's a package manager for JavaScript that contains lots of packages that are basically kind of pieces of codes that have already been written by other developers that you can reuse in your own programs. And that's very useful. And when I say other developers, that can be independent developers, that can be companies, that can be anything that exists and that is publicly available. One tool I will show you is called Nodemon or Nodemon. I never know how that should be pronounced. But this tool, Nodemon, will allow us to monitor the changes in our JavaScript code, in our Node.js code, and refresh the server every time we make a change, so that we don't have to restart it manually every time. So if I go on the first link here, Nodemon, I can click on this one, and this is the package Nodemon that's available on NPM. So we have some information about this package. Here we can see the description, installation, usage, and many information like this about the package itself. And on the right we have other information such as the number of weekly downloads, the version, license, size, etc. So we have really lots of information about this package. We will install this package in our application and try to make it work. So first thing, we're going back into the code. I will stop the server, and to use NPM packages and everything, the first thing we need to do is actually to initialize our folder or application so that it can use NPM. NPM is a command that comes with Node, so that means when you installed Node, you installed NPM along with it. So if I type here npm in my console and init to initialize this project, I can hit enter, and there I have some information that I can enter about this project. So the package name, I will call this getting started, that's the name of my application. Then the version, I say 0.0.1. Description, I can enter no description. Entry point is my index.javascript file by default, so I can just hit enter. Test command, I don't have any test command. Same for Git repository, no keywords. Author, I will say Boris. And finally, license, I will say no specific license. And if everything is okay, I will just enter yes. And now our folder has been initialized to use NPM packages. We can see that a file has been created here. It's called package.json, and basically this file will handle our information about our project and also dependencies that we will install. And dependencies of our project are packages that we will install through NPM. Let's try it out. If I install here Nodimon, I will install it with this command that will allow me to save only for development purpose this package. We could also install it globally. So globally means you can use it everywhere in your system. That can also be very useful. But for this project, I will just install it here locally as a save, as a development dependency for the project. Development dependency means that it will only use for development purpose and then not in production environment. I will paste this command, hit enter, and you can see here that it's installing now the package and all the dependencies of the package itself so that we can use it later. Interesting thing too is that we can see on this package.json that's managing our dependencies that it added some lines with nodemon, which is our package we just installed. So we will not go much into details with this package.json and also package.log.json, but that gives you a quick overview of how it works and what is this package.json file used for. So the next thing you can do is actually running our program again, our script, using this time not node but nodemon to refresh our server automatically. I will go here in Node.js, I will type nodemon index.js, and if I hit enter, you can see here that the server is running the same as before, but the difference now is that if I refresh the page and I make here some changes, for example making hello world, if I save the file, you can see that the server restarts automatically, and if I get back to the page, we don't have to restart the server manually every time. So that's just a very simple but useful tool that you can use when developing with Node.js. So far, we've seen how to create a very simple Node.js server, so with the getting started code, and how to manage NPM packages, especially with this nodemon example. Now, I think that we can go a bit more in details and speak about different packages, and especially one that's very useful to handle this HTTP server and requests from clients. As you've seen here, the code is very simple, it's very low level in the sense that it's dealing with the HTTP server itself and processing the requests there directly in the code. And there is a package that's called express.js, so I will go in the website express.js.com. which is, as it's stated here, a fast and opinionated minimalist web framework for Node.js. The idea, the core idea of Express is to handle your requests in a very seamless and easy way. So we can install this npm express, this package, so it's also a package. If we go here, you will see that it's a very well-known one, so Express, and here you can see that it's downloaded about 16 million times every week. We have some basic information here again on how to install the package, so with npm install express, that I will copy and paste directly here in my console. So I will paste the command, hit enter, and we can wait for Express to be installed. Another thing is that we have some code here that is similar to the getting started code from Node.js, except it uses not HTTP server from Node.js, but it uses here Express. So I will copy this code and I will directly paste it here below. So the idea of this code is actually to do the exact same thing as what we've done before with this code here, given by the Node.js getting started, just using this Express framework. So I'd say before that we will go back to this require here. Actually, the require that we see here is meant to import packages directly into our Node.js application. The HTTP package here, or the module, is directly embedded or integrated to Node.js. That's why we didn't have to download anything from NPM to use it. Now, with Express, it's a bit different because this module is now coming directly from my Node modules folder here, and it's imported directly from the module we installed through NPM. So we can delete everything that we wrote before and keeping only this Express application. If I now save the script again and run it using nodemon index.js, you can see if we go back to the browser, the application, the web page is showing exactly the same as before. And what's interesting here is that we will be able to handle our requests on the server directly through this interface, directly through these methods that are very, very simple. So I will go through it a bit more in details. The idea here is to send automatically HTML, so oppositely to what we had before, we don't have plain text, but we have HTML that is returned by this page. And also we will be able to handle requests on every path we want. We could, for example, add a new route using app.getHigh, and I will create a new function, so you can use either functions, classic functions of JavaScript, or use arrow functions, rec, res, and an arrow like this, and write res.send hi. By doing this, we can see here when I say the server is restarted automatically, and here if we go back to the application, I can refresh the page, nothing happened, but I can also add to the end of the URL /hi, and that will get me to the new page. So the idea of this Express framework, of this Express package, is really to ease the process of creating routes and creating a web application. Now we could discuss a bit more in details what this rec and res are, and basically here the rec is the requests that we're having, so the HTTP request, and res is the response. This is the response we're sending back to the client. So every time a client through a web browser makes a request, we're receiving this request object with many parameters that we could process, and we're sending back a response. And the send here allows us to send this actual response. If I didn't have any res.send, the script will just run infinitely and not stop. So if I go back to the server and refresh the page, you can see here that the page is just loading and loading until it reaches eventually a timeout. I will stop the loading there, and we can uncomment this line. Now let's talk a bit about this request object. In this request, if I make a console.log, you will be that it's pretty much illegible. If I save the route and I refresh the page, we can see here in the console.log that we have all information about the request that appears, but there is a lot of information there. We can see, for example, that the route we are reaching is indeed the high routes. If we see here, this is the path name, and we have really lots of parameters and information about the route itself. So instead of going through the whole objects, what's more interesting would be to add parameters and see what exactly we could process. For example, if we add a slash and a colon, and after this colon symbol we add, for example, name, this name will be a parameter of this route, and we will be able to retrieve it from rec.params. If I save here the file and I go back to the page, we can see that if I refresh the page, it cannot get this path because it doesn't exist anymore. But if I use hi/John, for example, you can see that it prints hi, And if we go back to the console here, we have this console log that's been executed, and you can see that we have name John. And this is really interesting because it will allow us to use very easily these different parameters. For example, I could say, instead of hi, I could say hi rec.params.name, and that will print the name of the person that reached this page. So if I refresh the page, we can see hi John, and if I write instead hi Boris, now it's printing hi Boris. So this is a very easy way that we can use with this colon symbol to define many parameters into our routes. And if I add one, for example, name and surname, I can easily use it again within the response directly. So that will be used with rec params surname. And I could say here, hi John Doe, and that will print hi John Doe. And this way we can add as many parameters as we want, and this is very easy to use them directly into our code. Another thing we could also do is using URL variables that you may have already seen somewhere. If you write a question mark and, for example, a parameter like parameter 1 equals value 1, you can also retrieve these parameters directly using the rec object, the request object, by making requests. So I will just make a console.log requests.query, and that will show all the query parameters. If I save this and I refresh the page, you will see this parameter 1 equals value 1 appearing directly here in the console. So that being said, we know now how to handle routes, how to create parameters, and that's interesting, but we don't have anything really concrete so far. So I think it's a good moment to introduce you to template engines that will allow us to display web pages. So one important thing to consider when using Node.js is that you can use Node.js to create APIs. You can easily send here in the response some JSON objects if you want to make, for example, a REST API, or you can also use HTML, text, or anything you want. Actually, it's very flexible, but you can also use what's called a template engine that will allow you to create HTML and to include directly parameters and variables from Node.js within this HTML template. So that will probably be more comprehensive when I will start showing what it looks like. The template engine that I want to show you is called EJS, so I will search here on NPM again, EJS. And EJS stands for Embedded JavaScript Templates. It's also really used a lot for templating with Node.js, and we can install it using this command here, npm install EJS, or a shortcut version that is npm-e for install and EJS. What makes EJS and also other template engines easy to use is that they can be very seamlessly integrated with Express. So Express here is creating an application, that's the variable called app or the constant, and for every element here, so for the whole process of our application, we are creating paths. So one path for the home page, one path for this hi route, and finally when all path and all configuration of Express has been done, we are entering this listen process where the application is basically listening to requests from clients. So in this case, requests from clients means requests from the web browser. Before having this request or listening to the browser, we will configure the application by writing app.set. And here in parameters, we will just enter settings for Express, and the name of the setting will be a string with view engine. Then we can enter a comma, and after this, the second parameter is EJS in a string that will allow us to bind EJS and Express together with just a single parameter. Finally, by just doing this, we will be able to render HTML through EJS templates. Now, we will be able to create our first template, and for that there is a default architecture, a default folders architecture that we can create here within our Node.js folder. I will right click on the folder, click on new folder, and I will create a folder that's called views, so views plural, and inside this folder I will create another one that's called pages. This structure is a common structure that will allow us to use our EJS templates. So I will create a page with new file and call it home.ejs. By default, EJS has the syntax of HTML with some mix with JavaScript. So to understand and highlight properly these files, I can recommend you to install extensions such as this one, EJS language support, that will enable syntax highlighting for EJS files. So back to the home file, I will create a very simple HTML structure with a head and meta charset equals UTF-8, a basic title. So title will be getting started with Node.js. And we can create also a body like this with just a title that says welcome, just like that. Okay, so that's our home.ejs, and to render this template, that means to show this template, this page to people, to visitors, we will need to change this function here. Instead of writing rest.send hello world, I will write rest.render pages/home. And you can see here that I'm not giving the folder views because the views folder is used by default to render our different views and pages. Now, if I save this and I go back, starting my server with Nodimon index.js, and I go back to the browser here in my root path, so with just a slash, we can see that we have the welcome page that appears. And we have also getting started with Node.js in the title. In other terms, we have managed to show this page here, this home.ejs page, directly to our users. Now the next step will be to use the same page, for example, or another one, that will say hi to our user. So as a recap, I will just transform this rest.send as a console.log, just to have this information in the console. I could render the same page if I wanted to have the same home.ejs page, or I can easily create a new one. I will just copy the contents and create a new file that I will call hi.ejs. I will paste the content here, and welcome I will replace this, or maybe not replace, but I will add here welcome an EJS tag. So EJS tag looks like this, the lower than symbol, then %, then equal, and finally I will print the name of the person. So here I will say welcome name or welcome first name. I will close this EJS tag with % and symbol greater than, and do the same for last name. Okay, now if we get back to the page here with the /hi/John/Doe, I will remove also these parameters. You can see that it makes the same appearing as before. The reason is because, well, we didn't save this index.js file, so we'll just save this. And if I refresh the page, we can see that we have the welcome page that's the same as the home page, because we have here rest.render pages/home, and also in the console we have hi John Doe. Now the next step will be to show not home page but hi, and to provide the appropriate parameters to this hi.ejs page. To do so, we will be using a JavaScript object directly in this render method. So I will write a comma, and here we can pass an object with name, so name for this element, this variable we're showing here, or not name but first name actually, so first name, and the first name will be rec.params.name, and the surname, the last name, will be last name rec.params.surname. The idea is that we can take parameters here from the request and directly give them to our template. And I'm also making using different names just to show you that this name is not the same as this first name, but we are giving this value of params name to this first name here that will be read or will be used by our EJS template. I can obviously do the same, I will show you later, with using more uniform variable names, but to get started with, we can save the page and we can refresh this. And as you can see here, we have welcome John Doe. So this is working, we're showing the template using JavaScript variables. Now I can obviously change the name here for surname. I will delete this console.log, that's not useful anymore. And here I can use params.first name, not surname here, but first name. And for the last name, I can also use the same here, surname, last name, and same here. With these little parameters, we've been able to render our page and to say welcome to any user of our page. If I say, for example, hello or hi Boris Flash, we can see that it says welcome Boris Flesch. And if I get back to the home page, then it says welcome just to this page. So this is the way we can use very basically Node.js, NPM, Express, EJS, and many other little tools to build a Node application. Of course, this is really, as I already said in this video, this is really a very simple example, and that's just to get started with the key concepts of Node and how it works and the different tools that you can use. There are many other things to know. We didn't do any processing on the different parameters we have. There is also other types of route. For example, we have get here, but to process HTTP post request or put or delete for a REST API, we could also use something like app.post and process this as a post request instead of a get one. There are a lot of other things to know, but I hope this video helped you getting started with some key concepts of Node.js and getting a taste and overview of what it looks like to program or to develop using this technology. So if you have any questions or something that you would like to learn in Node or using the different tools I mentioned in this video, please feel free to use the comment section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and to hit the like button, and you can also tell me in the comments what I can improve or change for these videos, because as you may have noticed, English is not my native language, and that's actually an exercise for me to train my speaking to create these videos in English. So thank you very much again for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.